Hello and welcome to an amazing podcast. This is the Tower of D Raga.
And this is Modi. And we are reviewing not reviewing or discussing or reviewing, doesn't really matter.
Discuss viewing
We're going to be
impressions.
talking. Yes. We're going to be doing Tower of God this week. This series has been hyped up so much. And yeah, it's a story about
a tower
a boy
owned by God.
Yes. Oh, I never even realized the God aspect of it. Now that I think about it, that's so funny.
Yes.
But what are your first thoughts on it?
Okay, so basically, Tower of God is a giant magical tower that if someone reaches the top, awesome stuff happens. It's a really interesting fantasy, high fantasy world. Very shonen-y, it's a very good shonen-y journey story fun. But I will say this. Pros. Interesting, enjoyable character design, neat characters, starting at episode 2. Art is really great, very eye-catching, and has a spectacular use of color in this. And yeah. Cons. Dude, I did not like the main character at all. Not at all. Also, I would say, so we watched the first 2 episodes, and if you gave me, if you told me I could only, if you gave me a binary choice of either watching something all the way through or just skipping something, and I had to make that binary choice based on the first episode, I would choose absolutely not. I did not like the first episode at all, and there are a few reasons for that. The first reason is the world building is very sloppy. We aren't really introduced to any of the characters. We're shown them, we're told about them, but we don't have any time to really get to know them and get to know who they are. On top of that, we are just thrown in, we just get tossed terms and a bunch of other world building stuff, but with no context and no we're told that this stuff is strong, but we aren't shown why it's strong prior. The biggest issue for me for the first episode was the introduction of Princess Tsundere-chan. She just appears in this. No warning, no explanation. We get name-dropped lore, and her motivation didn't make any sense at all. On top of that, and this goes back to my negative feelings about the protagonist, is he Mary Sues the living crap out of this. He's given the magical OP weapon because reasons. And because of that, the OP weapon serves as his sole reason for succeeding in the trial, which sucks because it takes away his agency and it takes away.
Wait. All right, sorry. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's because then it takes. He had an opportunity to get us really hyped for the main character to show how strong he is, but him relying on a weapon that was just handed to him because main character reasons really detracted from that. And yeah, the whole reasoning behind why he was able to use that was very lacking as well. Although I do feel like that was purposeful, and I do feel like it's not something you can really hold it against because it feels like the show is building towards that. But I will also say that the second episode is way better. I would argue that if we're talking level metrics, it feels like the writer of this was a level 1 writer the first episode, and the second episode he just jumps up to level 40. Because in this episode, all the characters get good introductions, they get organic introductions, and we have a lot of good interactions and a lot of good character dynamics, and we have a lot of good world building. And again, art is still really good.
Okay. Wow, I have a lot of things to say. Okay, so first of all, I'll start with the art. I agree, the art is really cool. Um, I don't really know what you mean about the colors. I guess. I mean, I don't really notice. I guess like I don't see it. I don't see what's special about it. Like when I think of series that have like cool, intriguing colors, you know, that like catch my eye, I would think of like Demon Slayer or like
JoJo's?
BNA or JoJo. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't really think of this. So what do you mean by that?
So this is a personal taste, but I've always been a huge fan of vibrant, loud colors. And it
Okay, I
does a
see.
very good job of like setting a color for a stage or for an environment and pushing it really hard. Like the bright oranges for the fields, contrasting each of the characters, to like the dark blues of the tunnels, the dark reds of a lot of the early scenes, and more of like the deep bluish green for like the steel eel scene. It has a very strong. It's not like is the coloring in this isn't realistic, but it has such a great stylization to it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I think the art is cool. As for the setting, you said that it wasn't established, I guess, or it
Mm.
wasn't explained enough. But I feel like it was. I feel like it was explained enough as you needed to be explained in
Mm-hmm.
episode 1 to keep you interested, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the premise by itself to me is just like that's just an automatic hook right there. Like there's a tower, and if you get to the top of the tower, you can get anything you ever want. You pretty much become a god.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally tons of people want to go up the tower. And then Bam's motivation for going up the tower is even more interesting because he doesn't care about all that. He just wants to find someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's pretty cool.
Right.
Um, and for Yuri's introduction, I can see your problem with it because she just shows up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's something that like I don't know why you would expect that to be explained in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I'm being lenient, but I feel like maybe I think to me you maybe if the premise of the show was different,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably have the same criticism as you. But I feel like the premise of the show is good enough that it kind of just I go into it with the expectation that like all of this stuff is supposed to be like you're supposed to have a lot of questions,
Mm-hmm.
and the main thing that's supposed to be keeping you watching is you'll find out more if Bam gets to the next level, you know?
Yes.
Like the further up he goes, like, you know, the more you'll find out about the world because you're right, not much is explained, but even as we see from episode 1 to 2, we learn a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, so that's what I would say about that. As for Bam as a character, when you were talking about how he killed the snake thing, I feel like that was not. You said it showed that he didn't have any. Like it was just kind of like a Deus Ex
If
Machina kind of thing.
it didn't say, I
But
wouldn't say Deus Ex Machina, but I feel like he was handed too much for this. Like if he had done all of this, but without like just being tossed a handout by Princess Ex Machina, it would have been a lot more interesting.
okay, so I have two rebuttals to that. The first rebuttal is that they did say that this test that he was being given was way above the type of test he should have received. Like
Mhm.
Head On gave him a test that was like supposed to be hard for even someone who was at level 20 of the tower.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's not like him getting the sword necessarily meant that it would work because
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember, but they said that the sword barely even worked for her. Like
Mhm.
for Yuri, like the sword did not grant her the power. So
That's because she wasn't the main character.
well, yeah, but I feel like I'm looking at it the opposite way of you, which is that you're looking at it as because he's the main character, he's giving all these advantages. Like he's being given all these advantages in the story. But the way I'm seeing it is that the reason we're focusing in on this guy as the main character is because there's something special about him inherently, and that's what the show is like. That's what everything is pointing towards, like how he somehow got first of all, the fact that he even got into the tower because he is an irregular, then the fact that he got the sword to work, which is not something that just happens to anyone, and then the fact that he got through that water wall thing in episode 2. So I feel like I'm looking at it through the idea that like the story is like honing in on this guy. In reality, no, it's the author makes it however he wants, but like it's like the story is trying to focus in on it's not trying to like act like it's not trying to hide the fact that he is OP and he's like very lucky. Like they even say you need luck to climb the tower, you know what I mean? So I feel like the story's focusing in on this guy because he is special in some way. Right. And then, so my final thing that I would ask is, if this is how you feel about him, how do you feel about Bleach then and Ichigo? Because if you think back to the first episode of Bleach, I mean, I would say it might even be worse if you look at it that way.
I would say the opposite, because it's a matter of the main character. Ichigo, while he was given power, he did seem like he earned it. Like, he was sacrificing himself to stop the Hollow. He was going out of his way to protect a little girl's ghost. He felt like an honorable kind of dude who, in a time of desperation, you could trust with those powers. Because remember, with Bleach, it was a do-or-die situation. Rukia didn't have neither Rukia or Ichigo had much of a choice to pursue the actions they undertook. There was a concrete life or death reason for that. There was absolutely no real clear reason why he was worthy of the powers, and why she would give him the sword. On top of the fact that I wasn't as endeared to Bam as I was with Ichigo. When I saw the scene where he was standing up for the little ghost girl, I automatically felt for him. I knew that this was a good guy. But with Bam, I wasn't able to form the connection with him yet. And that, I will say, is a matter of preference. I lean more towards the strong, independent, more brass and badass-ish characters, or like the characters who aren't like afraid to kick ass and take names. And the fact that Bam is such a incredibly meek main character at this moment, and that's not to say like meek characters can't be badass. Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul is amazing. Midoriya from My Hero Academia is equally amazing. But the biggest problem with Bam was, in this first episode, it did not feel like we were given any reason to root for him.
Okay, I can agree with that.
And let me ask you another question. Let me ask you another question. If Bam when the eel had eaten Bam, and we just say if at the scene where the eel just eats Bam, say in this alternate version he dies and we move on to Kun as the main character, would you feel anything about his death?
Yeah. I would. Because
I must be a horrible person.
Well, okay, I'll tell you why. I think maybe it's because the real hook of the series is lost on you for some reason. I don't know. Like, I guess you just don't care about it. But I think the real hook of the series is like him. The thing that makes him and the series unique is that he's trying to like, he wants to find Rachel again. So to me, from when that was explained, like when that was established, that was what I was actually about to say, which is that that's what made me connect to him. Not
Mhm.
connect really, but like that's the thing that made me care about the main character. With
Right.
Bleach, I agree with you that it was much stronger in Bleach, and relatively this is kind of weaker.
Mm.
But that's the thing that like I think for me and probably for a lot of people like
Mm.
creates that connection with the main character.
Mhm.
And I guess maybe just for you, you just like don't care about that. And that's I would say if
Mhm.
you don't, then that's probably the reason that you don't like Bam that much.
Now, I will say this, that I would say despite this first episode, the second episode did get me hooked into it. Because for me, I think the main appeal for this show is the cast of characters. I've always been a big fan of like shows with crazy eclectic ensemble cast, and I will say that this show
Then
has
you would
it
love One
in
Piece.
spades.
It has what?
I said this has it in spades.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I like pretty much all the characters that have been shown so far. But what about Yuri? You don't like Yuri?
Again, we didn't get a good introduction to her. If our introduction to Yuri was just her running around the fields kicking butt, like showing her like normal interactions between other people, I would have been a much bigger fan of her. Because in this first episode, she literally felt like the most blatant Deus Ex Machina I could possibly think of.
Okay, all right. I would agree with you if it weren't for if it weren't just for that detail of that not anyone can just activate the sword.
Mm.
That's
you have to
the
have
only
a penis.
thing. Huh?
You have to have a penis.
Oh yeah, that's true. The Black March lady, she was like, yeah, I don't like. She was pretty much like, be gone, woman, be gone, thought. Yeah, that was funny.
Yes.
So what do you think about like just overall putting characters aside? What do you think about the premise of the Tower of God, climbing the tower?
I think the premise is solid. Is not the kind of premise where someone tells me about it, I'm like, oh man, this is so hype. So it's like,
really?
Yeah, it's not like Attack on Titan. It's probably on the par of Tokyo Ghoul, might be a little bit higher, and is not like. I feel like the elevator pitch for this show wouldn't be as strong as stuff like Attack on Titan, or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or a few other things, but at the same time,
really?
I won't say that it is bad in any sense, because that's the hard thing. Like,
so
you go ahead.
No, you can finish your thought.
What I was saying is like pitches are really hard because so few ideas really like can be expressed in such few words. Like Attack on Titan is Japanese Spider-Man fighting 100-foot tall zombies, where Tower of God is basically a group of people climbing a tower to get MacGuffin. I've seen that premise before, and for me, like I said, the premise isn't the hook. The hook is the execution.
Okay, so I would say first I'll talk about the comparisons you made, like Attack on Titan and JoJo. I would say the premise, definitely Attack on Titan is probably the best premise of anything. I can't think of many premises that are better. But Attack on Titan is not the type of premise, in my opinion, that would get by on an elevator pitch. I feel like Attack on Titan is one of those that completely relies on the execution. Like you have to execute it well. Like that first episode, or the first chapter or whatever, has to be executed well for you to like really get it right. And then for JoJo, I would say JoJo would
Even
make
more.
absolutely zero sense if you tried to explain it. Like I've never once successfully tried to I've never once explained JoJo to anybody. It's just something you have to watch to get it right.
That's why I love it so much.
Yeah. But then something like Tower of God, I think it's the opposite. I think with Tower of God, it's like that's the kind of premise you tell someone and they're like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool. And even if you look at how even when you look at how the premise is, the explanation of the premise is executed in the show or in the webtoon, I mean, there isn't really much execution needed, right? They pretty much just tell you, hey, this is it. There's a tower, and if you climb it, you get everything, right?
Right.
And I think that's all you really need because the premise is that good.
Right.
And I think it's good because a lot of it depends on genre, and like a lot of these types of stories, like, you know, a lot of the types of viral shonen stories, like with good premises, like this, or like with My Hero Academia, for example, a lot of the time they feel a lot like video games. You know what I mean? And this is the kind of thing that I can absolutely, like, if someone came to me and told me this idea, I would be like, you make this and it's going to blow up, because it just, like, it would just hit with so many people just because it feels like it's exactly what, you know, it just strikes exactly what a shonen type fan wants, like competition, like fighting, and it just takes that idea. A lot of shonen stories take that and like they expand it and they go, like, you know, they do a lot of different things, but this kind of just takes it and boils it down and gives you like, just, it gives you like the meat of what you want, right? Like, you get bunch of people who are like poor, desolate, desperate, they all want something, you know, and you have a tower, and the stronger you are, the higher up you can go in the tower, and they compete to go higher up, and if you reach the top of the tower, you win everything. It's just like a straight up competition, and I feel like at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people want, which is why I think the premise is actually very, very good for Tower of God. And it's one of those ideas that's like, god damn, that's so obvious, why didn't I think of that? You know what I mean? When you hear it, it's like, oh, of course, that's so good.
To be fair, Sword Art Online did that, and
it worked.
Also, the premise of the joke I did, Tower of D Raga, it was a play on the show Tower of Drew Raga, and that also followed that premise. Really underrated show, by the way.
Yeah, it must be really underrated because I've never heard of it.
But I will say this. I would say it's definitely a solid show, but there are some, like, issues. I have a few issues with it, and I think outside the first episode, a lot of the issues are just personal taste things. And I think the biggest one is I've never really been a big fan of shows that are just, like, leaning on one main goal. I've always been a bigger fan of, like, arc-based shows where that one arc is the, like, where instead of it like being just the entire 5,000 episodes are just about getting to One Piece, I like shows where it's just like we fight for about 100. We fight for about 50 chapters. We get One Piece. Now we have to go find 5 Piece or something like that. Now, granted, I only seen the first 2 episodes of it, and I'm not sure if it goes that route. I was expecting Castlevania to go that route, and I was pleasantly surprised when it didn't.
Yeah, I've read a bit into the webtoon, and I've been spoiled actually on a lot of what happens in much later in Tower of God, just because I know people who who read it. So all I'll say is there are a lot of things. If you continue, there are a lot of things coming that you wouldn't expect.
Okay.
But I would say in terms of like the arc thing, I would say every level of the floor is like, that's what I'm saying, how it just takes everything that you would expect in show and it just boils it down and just makes it so simple and like easy to digest, and just like, there you go, this is what you want, there you go, you have it. Like, every arc is pretty much just every level of the floor, you know what I mean? Like, at least that's the impression that that I'm getting from it. But then you say that, but you like Hunter x Hunter, and Hunter x Hunter is like, you know, just one thing, I want to find my dad. So what's different?
I wouldn't say that would keep me from liking it, but I will say that it is a preference.
Okay, got you.
And plus, the other thing is, I feel as though Gon finding his dad isn't like the singular purpose of the show. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
each arc isn't like directly building to him finding his dad. So the first arc was
Yeah.
him getting the license. The second arc was him fighting Hisoka. The second arc was them getting to the whatchamacallit, the auction. In Hunter x Hunter, his dream of finding his dad was a lot like Naruto's dream of becoming Hokage. It's something
Yeah.
that drives the character, but doesn't drive the show, and it isn't like the complete end all be all.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that actually.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. But I do prefer shows that are like that though. I like it when like actually I don't know because Hunter x Hunter is like an all time favorite and I don't mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say at the very least I don't mind when like everything is just building up towards one thing where like the character is just has his eyes focused on trying to just get one thing. I usually don't mind that. Did you have any like favorite or least favorite characters? I know you already hate Yuri. Is there anyone who you like?
So my least favorite are definitely Bam and Yuri, but I really do love Kun and Rack. I mean, come on. Rack Wraithriser. That is the most badass, one of the most badass names I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah, for me, my favorite would probably be Rack and Yuri. I like Yuri too,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't get as much at first we got of Rack. So right now, Rack is
Mm-hmm.
number one. I also liked, I also like Kun, but to me, he's just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I was about to say he's the kind of character that I've seen a lot before, but I've seen all of these types of characters a lot before, so I don't even know where I was going with that.
But, question, have you seen him blue?
No, I have not. I have not. In fact, that's actually a very interesting color because I don't think I see many characters in anime that have that specific color of blue as their hair.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like Rack. I also like I forgot his name, but the guy who was wearing the tracksuit. You know who I'm talking about? The purple tracksuit guy.
Shinsuke.
I like him a lot for some reason. Like he's funny.
Like the character pairings in this are really good.
Yeah. I agree. And characters I don't like. There's no one that I don't like actually. Right. Like I like all of them. But yeah, so I think that's it really that I have to say. Is there anything else? Any other thoughts you have?
How would you rank it? 1 to 10.
I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's really good. So it's interesting because I say that, but so I was reading Tower of God I was reading Tower of God the webtoon like a couple years ago, and I don't know how far I got, maybe like 30 chapters or something in, and then I just like stopped for a while, but then I just didn't go back to it, and there wasn't any particular reason. Like it's not like anything happened that made me stop, but I just like there wasn't anything that was like really, really like keeping me going either. So I kind of just fell off from it. But I like it, and I don't really have any problems with it overall. So yeah, I'll give the first 2 episodes like an 8, I guess 7 or 8. What about you?
So I would give the first episode a 5 out of 10. I would give the second episode a 8 out of 10. And I would give the overall experience or my first impressions I can understand why this is so popular out of 10.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, to me it's like it's very, very clear why this series is popular. Like it's just like it's literally when I first heard of Tower of God, I was like, oh, of course. Like just of course. There's another webtoon that's really popular, and it's only a matter of time before this gets made into an anime too. Yeah. It's called Solo Leveling. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And I literally know nothing about Solo Leveling except for the title, and just from the title, I can completely understand why it's so popular. It sounds like a video game, you know, like.
I would say that
yeah.
I will say this though. I think the number one reason I wasn't a big fan of the first episode is that, again, this is a personal taste kind of thing. I am really anal about first episodes of series.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like the first episode, the last episode are the two most important episodes. The middle episode being the second.
Then there must be so many shows that you hate, because I can count on one hand the amount of shows that have good last episodes, or like that end well. You know.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So yeah. So that has been our first impressions of Tower of God, episodes 1 and 2. Let us know if you have any thoughts on it, and thank you for watching. See you next week.
All right. Take it easy.